Hello. Today we are going to dive in on how to start a podcast to grow your brand. And yeah, let me go ahead and click to present my screen. So we're going to dive right in. I am all about being efficient with time. So this is my podcast on this front cover, the Purpose and Pixie Dust podcast. I am a podcaster. I talk systems, productivity, and I have inspiring guest interviews with other women entrepreneurs who are doing the thing. And so I have really used my podcast to grow my business coaching brand. So my name is Lindsay Dollinger. I am a business coach for women. I'm the podcast host of the Purpose and Pixie Dust podcast, which is currently at the time of recording this a top 3% global podcast, which I'm really proud about. And then I'm also a dog mama to my girl Bella. She's a rescue dog from Puerto Rico. She was a street dog. I am currently still in the classroom as a high school Spanish teacher. I love to travel and I ran the Disney Marathon last year. I love all things Disney. So I have, sprinkled that in my branding and in a lot of what I do. So if you end up following me over on Instagram, my email list, things like that, you'll see a lot of Disney along the way as well. So here's what we're covering today. The tools that you're going to need to start your podcast, many of them are free or you already have them. This doesn't have to be anything that is something super expensive or something that really honestly takes you a lot of time. And we're going to go into that. The basic structure of a podcast so that it will convert traffic and ways that you can promote your show, again, for free. How you can use podcast guests to get in front of new audiences, and how to promote your own website and products on your show so that you get sales out of it. So here's some quick stats why you need to podcast. And these are according to Buzzsprout and also Riverside FM on the next slide. But 62% of people ages 12 plus have listened to a podcast, and 26% listen to one regularly. And those stats are actually from last year. And I heard some updated ones on a podcast recently, and this number is even higher and expected to grow. Podcast listeners are more likely to follow brands on social media. So, again, your podcast is going to tie in really well with your brand, your business. And on average, podcast listeners tune into at least 8 different shows a week. So, just because people already have their shows that they listen to and love doesn't mean they can't add another one, which is your show. 60% of podcast listeners have bought something from an ad. So, we're going to talk about that toward the end of the presentation, but I definitely recommend promoting your products and services as ads on your podcast. The US ad dollars are projected to increase to $4 billion by 2024. And 2023 was a record year for podcasts with 150 million active podcast listeners in the US alone. And that came from Riverside FM, which is a online recording platform for podcasts. So that's one tool that you can look into using if you would like it, especially if you don't have a Mac, because I'm talking about how I use my Mac. All right, now what? So, first question I want you to kind of think about and consider. If you're not yet a podcast listener, I would recommend listening to some podcasts before you decide whether or not you're going all in on one. Just, kind of get a feel. How do other people run their shows? What are their intros like? Do they use music? Where do their ads go? Do they use ads? Are they sponsored ads, or are they just promoting their own products? So really do, kind of a little bit of market research and decide what kind of shows do you listen to? Are they shows that are more funny? Are they shows that have guest interviews? Are they shows that are more educational? And just see kind of naturally what you gravitate to, because remember, your ideal client is you in the past. So keeping that in mind, what you like is probably what your listeners are going to like as well. Now, when we're talking about topics for what you're going to talk about, because this is the thing I know that held me back for a really long time, and I have over, I don't know, 325 episodes at this point. So, what to talk about has never really been an issue, but I was nervous that I wouldn't have things to talk about. So, you're just going to talk about things that you're already blogging or posting or making videos about, that you're already having conversations about, that you're already teaching about. And so, my suggestion is to just start brain dumping, make a list. I really love and use Trello, and I'm going to provide for you at the end of this presentation a link to grab my Trello board for literally it walks you through getting started on your podcast. Everything you need, it has links. It's freaking amazing. But like I mentioned, I really love Trello. So I open up a Trello board and I do a lot of my content planning in my Trello board. So I will just brain dump and I separate it into my content pillars for my podcast. If you're familiar with Trello, there's like different cards, almost like sticky notes. So, having one for different guest interviews that I want to do, having one for social media tips that I want to talk about, having one for productivity. So, different things like that. And so, under each of my content pillars, I recommend having 3 to 5. And we can dive into that later because this isn't really necessarily about content planning, but 3 to 5 content pillars, and then you just start brain dumping on your list all the ideas of topics that you can come up with. And once you get 10, like once you get 10 different topics you could talk about, I think you're ready to record. We don't have to overthink this. This doesn't have to be something that we have 100 ideas because you're afraid that once you run out of those 10, you're never going to think of 10 again. You will. I promise you will. So, and keep remembering too that you can always be pulling ideas from other podcasters, your clients you're working with, things that you're seeing other people post about. So, this is going to be an ongoing list for you. So, mindset wise, just get out of your way right now. You're going to have plenty of things to talk about. So I like to brain dump your topics, brain dump titles. Another great tool for this is AI. Head into Chat GPT and ask them for 20 topics or 20 titles. Or once you get your topics, have Chat GPT help you come up with some titles. Another thing that I like to do is look up podcasts that are in your niche, that are in your industry, and see what sort of things they're talking about, or maybe think about which of their episodes were your favorite and create your own spin on those things, share your own knowledge and intake on those topics, because chances are if you like them, your ideal audience is going to like them as well. And then last thing to think about is your show logistics. So how often are you going to release an episode so that you are consistent? I recommend once a week, at least when you're getting started. I did once a week for like, I don't even know, like 2 weeks when I got started. And then I immediately jumped into doing 2 shows a week. And I did 2 shows a week for about 2.5 years. And then I scaled back to one show last summer. I really like the one show for where I'm at in my business, where my business is growing so much, plus I have a full time job. It just made a little bit more sense for me. However, I have considered many times about adding two back in. So who knows? By the time you're listening to this, I could be doing two. But whatever you do, I want to encourage you to stay consistent with it. So even though I don't still do the 2 shows a week, I let my audience know, "Hey, starting next week, there'll be 1 show a week. This is why," etcetera. It's not like I jump back and forth, 1 show, 2 shows, no show, etcetera. So think about how often you wanna release your episodes, and then think about whether you're going to do a solo show or a guest show or a mixture of both. I've always been a mixture of both. I am scaling back a little bit on the guest interviews at this point just because I'm really enjoying the solo episodes. I really want to make sure that my guests are very well aligned with, my purpose and what I'm trying to get out of my podcast and what I want my clients to get out of my podcast as well. And so solo and guest has worked really well for me, but you get to decide. Do you want to do solo? Maybe every show is a guest show where you do an interview, or you can do a mixture of both. Again, that's kind of what I prefer. All right, moving right along. Logistics. So, once you have some ideas for your title, for your show topics, for this vision of what your show is going to look like, let's talk logistics. So, you need a hosting site platform. These are the four that I recommend, and I will explain a little bit about why right now. Podcast.co is the host that I use. And I will be honest, I use podcast.co because back when I wanted to start a podcast in January of 2020, I belong to, oh, what's it called? AppSumo. If you don't belong to AppSumo, it's a free membership. AppSumo. They are constantly pushing out deals on different tech things, apps, lots of things to help run your business, and a lot of times it's things that are new, so you can get them at a very cheap rate, and a lot of times it's like a lifetime deal. So podcast.co was a new podcast hosting platform, and I got a thing for a podcast, like a lifetime pass for their site for like 50 bucks. So I am grandfathered in. I'm pretty sure it's like $50 a month now. With that being said, if I did not have the deal that I had, so I'm like not paying anything anymore for my host, I would choose Buzzsprout. Buzzsprout seems to be kind of like the leader in the industry. I know some of my friends have had Buzzsprout and recently switched to some other platform. I don't remember which one it is for a lifetime deal and things like that. But Buzzsprout tends to be the one that I hear a lot of people talk about. They have good analytics. They have some good AI qualities in them as well. Anchor is free, which is great. But, just kind of do your research. Google podcast hosts, see what people are saying about them, read from someone who's like not invested. And then the last one I listed up here is Lipson. Lipson is another one that has been around for a really long time. I know some people have used it. And so that's why I wanted to put them up there. So these 3 are really popular, and then podcast.co is the one I personally use. They have very great customer service. Anytime I send them a message, they immediately respond. So I really don't have anything bad to say about them, just that it's not as well known for whatever reason. So you definitely need a host. This is like most important. Audiograms is something you can kind of get to later, but audiograms are those little short clips of video that you see that is like the audio wave. Sometimes it's the picture of people talking, like which would be you as the host, or if you have a guest, you and the host, or you and the guest. And this is like little clips of the podcast. And so I have 2 sites or apps you can use to get those: Headliner and Descript. Of the 2, I would recommend Descript because Descript is not only gonna do your audiograms, but it's also gonna do transcriptions for you. It will remove the word and other filler words. You can edit really easy. I actually just got a subscription to Descript very recently, and so of the 2, I would recommend Descript. You're gonna need a recording device. So, don't overthink this, okay? You don't have to have anything really special because I'm assuming you have a laptop or you have a smartphone. So, laptop, I use a Mac. And so because I have a Mac, I use GarageBand. And I either use GarageBand, or if I am doing a video podcast, I use StreamYard, which is what I'm recording with right now. And another option is Zoom. You can do Zoom. And so, unless you are recording podcasts that are longer than 40 minutes, you can just use your free Zoom. So, again, it doesn't have to be anything that you're, doing a lot with. Now, if you have a PC, Audacity is a program that you can use. I believe it's free. I could be wrong about that, but I believe it's free to record. Another option is I believe you can record right onto script, if I'm not mistaken. And then that Riverside FM that I mentioned at the beginning also does recording. That is paid though. So there's lots of recording software out there. Again, you can do your research, you can just use what you already have. I know many people, myself included, though, who literally with your I have an Apple, so I have all Apple products, but I have an Apple smartphone. What do they call it? An iPhone. I couldn't remember what it's called. I have an iPhone, and I just use the voice memos. Just use the voice memos. Anything you can record your voice on, you can turn into a podcast. Also, if you have a video, I repurpose a lot of my videos. So this could even be like a Facebook Live, a video that you have on your phone. You can repurpose all of that for a podcast. And then last thing is a mic. Mics are great and they're nice, but if you have good audio quality, I'll be completely honest with you, I haven't used a mic in years. Am I considering doing it again just to up my podcast game a little? Yes, but most people say that my podcast audio quality, unless you are like a trained professional, aren't going to notice that I don't use a mic. And then editing, I keep moving the cursor. Sorry, that's a bad habit of mine. Editing, I just do my editing in GarageBand, or Descript has some really amazing editing features as well. And then if you need to convert to an MP3 file for any reason, sometimes you need to do that in GarageBand. There is a piece of software you can download for free. If you go to Google and you type in FRE.AC, you can download it to your computer and then you can put in a video file and it'll convert it to an MP3 file for you. So that's kind of a fun workaround for that. So that's basically the logistics that you need, right? You need to be able to record a piece of audio, do some editing, and I'll be honest with editing, I don't really do much editing. The only editing that I generally do is I will drag in and insert my intro, like the intro that plays at the beginning of my show, and I will drag and insert an ad, and I will drag and insert my outro music, and that's it. So logistics wise, it doesn't have to be something that takes you hours and hours. And then here's the fun stuff. Now we get to launch our show. So come up with a piece of cover art. You can Google the exact sizes for that, but I just made mine in Canva. And make your cover art, make it big, bold, because you want it to be able to show up it, really nicely in the podcast app. So think about how small the apps are on your phone. And then you're going to record your intro. Short intro, no more than a minute and a half. Again, listen to some other people's intros to get an idea of what you could say for yours. Then, once you have that, you're going to want to upload a trailer. Your trailer can be short, it can be a couple minutes, it can be up to 10, just explaining to people what they can expect from you and your show, who you are, and get that uploaded with your cover in your host and click to publish so that it will start sending it out to all of the podcast apps. And this can take a while. This can take anywhere from 24 hours for it to become live to a couple weeks. So this isn't something that you can click publish and it's immediately pushed out there. It has to get approved in all the different apps to push out. And then I recommend before you start advertising that you upload at least 3 episodes. It doesn't have to be 10. Don't do 10 before you tell people about it, upload 3 and then wait for those to show up and then promote them. Because usually, if you're a podcast listener yourself, you're going to know that once we find a podcast we like to binge them. So you want to have a couple shows at least up there for your audience to binge. The last thing is show notes. So when you upload your audio into your host, you'll upload the audio, you'll type in the title, you'll type in an episode number, your name, a website if you want to send it to a website, and then you can essentially just write some notes about the episode that will be published with the episode. Make sure to include some highlights, what people can expect to get out of listening to that episode, and then any links, where can they connect with you, anything that you mentioned in the show, make sure to include that. And you're ready to promote. Promoting's the fun part, right? You have done all this work, you have so much stuff to show to the world, you have so much to teach and learn. So have some fun with this. Maybe you're going to plan like a launch. I would definitely do a launch party, make it a big event, ask people, get like a little launch party together for you, and like by party, I mean like a group of people who will go out and promote your show for you, encourage people to share it, have some giveaways, have some fun with it. Now, here's the fun thing that you can do with a podcast is you can repurpose it into content in so many ways. So I actually like to start, if you've seen my training on repurposing your content, I like to start with my podcast as my main piece of content. And then I take all of that knowledge that I have shared on the podcast and I reshare it in other ways. So I create static posts, carousels, infographics. Infographics, a lot of times I end up putting like on Pinterest, reels, where I take those audiograms that I mentioned. It can be a TikTok, it could be a YouTube short, right? Stories. So stories I will either share about the podcast or I will do like a talking story where I'm like, hey, make sure you check out today's podcast. I have on this guest. Or I will do a story after I have interviewed a guest before it goes live on my podcast and say, you guys are really going to want to catch this when it goes live next month or whatever, because I had the best time interviewing so and so. You can do lives together. So I actually do that because I record everything in StreamYard. So when I do an interview with a guest, I stream it to LinkedIn, my Facebook group, and my Facebook business page first, like, live in the moment. Then I download the audio and put that on my podcast. So the live actually comes first for me when I do that. Don't forget as well that if you do have interviews and so you have guests on your show, this is an amazing way to collaborate with other people. And then if you're recording video, you can repurpose that on YouTube, which I do as well. You can email your list, and I highly recommend this because people aren't going to know about your podcast if you're not talking about it all the time. So email your list every time that there's a new show or include about your podcast in your weekly email. And then, as I mentioned, you can also repurpose if you, and I didn't even put on here, but I usually do a blog as well for every podcast. And my blogs, a lot of times, are just the transcription if it's an audio file, or I use different AI sources to help me create a blog. I tweak it and then I post it on my blog. And so then in my email that goes out, I share the link to the podcast, YouTube, and the blog posts because some people aren't podcast people, but I want them to get that info. And so then they get it from YouTube or the blog. Okay, here's some tips to grow your show now that your show is going because your show's going to get started so soon, right? Social posts, as I already mentioned. So you have to share about it or people are not going to know about it. Guest collaborations are a really, really great way to grow your show. So be thinking, who can add value to your audience and who would make not only a great guest, but who also has an audience of their own that it would be great for you and your podcast to get in front of because 90% of my guests share the podcast like they're asked to and like they agree to on their social with their email list, etc. Because who doesn't want to share and get themselves street cred for being on someone else's podcast? Like that's a big deal, right? So we are basically sharing each other's audiences when you have a guest collaboration. Also, you can ask your listeners to share on social media. So that's usually a call to action that I have in mind. Like if you enjoyed this podcast, screenshot it, share it with a friend, tag me in your stories, and I will reshare. So when people do share on social media, please comment on it or reshare it. Give them some love so that they feel appreciated and that they keep doing that. And then other people see you doing that and they're like, oh, well, I listened to her show. So I should share that I listened to her show. And then she's going to reshare it for me. Right. As for reviews, so I've heard mixed feedback on whether reviews are as important as maybe they once were. Ask for them, try to get them anyway, regardless of how important they are, because I do think that if someone is stumbles upon your show and was not aware of it and they see that you have 55-star reviews and it's just raving, things that people are saying about you, they're more likely to give your show a chance. So ask for those reviews, get some friends on deck, ask your social media, ask your clients for to give you some reviews, maybe do a fun giveaway. So that's the next thing here, do a giveaway for the above things to really start promoting and get the word out there about your show. And then two more things on here, don't forget to promo in your emails and repurpose on your blog if you do have it because let's stop wasting so much time creating new content when we don't have to, right? Let's repurpose some stuff. Now, the fun part, monetizing. So, these are some ways that you can make money from your podcast. The top one is that you can make your own ads for your products and services. So, if you have a free webinar coming up, you have like I have my mastermind, I have courses, retreats when I run them. I make sure to talk about them on my podcast, whether it's an actual ad that I'm inserting separate, or maybe it's just me talking about it like this, right? So I make sure to always be promoting my own products and services. You can also promote your affiliate links in ads. So occasionally I will do an ad like I really love, for example, Primally Pure. It's an all natural deodorant. I have an affiliate code for it. So every once in a while, I will throw an ad in for my affiliate links as well as ads, even though those people are not actually paying me for them. You can eventually get sponsors also. So my sponsor of my podcast right now is Bella Bling Shop. It is a Disney inspired women's clothing and accessories line. So it really kind of makes sense for my audience. And so they pay me for ads and it's all things that I love and use anyway. So I'm like, okay, why not? And then you're just going to include the links for the things that you're directing people to in your show notes to make it super easy for people to click on them. And then the very last thing is don't forget to promote your email list and your freebies in your podcast as well, because that's where kind of like the sweet sauce of you converting clients is going to happen. So, super quick review. My tips, just get started, just do it. Start low budget until you see if you can commit. So, don't go out there and feel like you need to buy a $500 microphone, all the equipment, all the audio stuff. You don't need to right now. So, just start low budget until you see if you're going to commit, you're going to really love it. Commit to at least 6 months of being a podcaster. So, this is your new identity, really step into it, commit 100%. Don't overwhelm yourself. So, like I mentioned, I would recommend one show a week, and then you can add more. Really decide if you have to edit and spend time on that. And that's totally up to you if you want to. And then strategically pick your guests and provide them PR so they can promote easily. So, what I mean by PR is just provide them with the graphics and, email them, let them know your show's out, and then make social templates. So, like graphics on Canva to help you out. So, if they're a template, you can just quickly pull them and it's not a ton of work for you. So, here are all the ways that you can connect with me. And I'm mostly on Instagram or Facebook. This is my podcast, my website where you can find everything or shoot me an email. And then, as promised, here is the link to that Trello board with everything mentioned. You can take a screenshot or it will be linked below for you. All right. I hope you enjoyed this presentation. I would love to hear what your podcast is going to be and go out there and get started.